Wakey, wakey, another beautiful day. This is July the 12th of 2023, and I'm glad that you're joining us here on Morning Prime. Today being Wednesday, we have Global Today coming your way, where we center our focus on matters, foreign policy, security, and also matters to do with diplomacy. We shall be looking at a raft of issues this morning. Of course, looking at the security here in the country as far as demonstrations are concerned. Also, we shall be talking a lot regarding the security of the region as well. Following up the meeting of IGAD, where there is still a stalemate as far as the Sudan crisis is concerned, where we have Sudan refusing to attend the regional peace talks in Ethiopia. And they're opting actually to go for the Ethiopia summit. This is all in a quest to have peace in Sudan. We shall be looking at that with the panelists as well. Here in Nairobi, we have the African Union Private Sector Forum that is meeting, and this seeks to fast-track trade under the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. We shall be looking at also the NATO summit and why Ukraine may not yet be a member of NATO, despite the fact that there is good signs that the NATO alliance will be admitting them. Also, Gabon politics. Ali Bongo seeks third term as president in upcoming elections. We shall be also looking at that as well, and a raft of other issues here in the country. We have a lot to talk about. The Shakahola horror, with numbers, of course, taking up as far as retrieval of bodies from the graves are concerned. We have a lot to talk today, and looking at also what does the 15 million signatures portend as far as security is concerned, and also with the demonstrations ongoing today. My name is Dibala Nair. We have a panelist already here in studio with us, and also this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard this morning. A diplomatic faux pas that we saw yesterday, and we know the president of Iran will be now jetting into the country today, despite the fact that was scheduled to happen yesterday. It never materialized, but we shall be looking at what really happened from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that they had to reschedule this particular visit to today. And of course, also the Iranian government have taken special umbrage with that as well. We shall give you the gritty details of this as well with a panelist this morning. We are holding court today with Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. Also, we're joined by the Executive Director of Amnesty International. This is Irungu Houghton. We're joined by the Director of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, and Ahmed Hashi, who is a governance and policy analyst. But see what is fresh off the press this morning. Behind me is the bold paper, and it's all about that intrigue that we were talking about, the diplomatic faux pas that happened yesterday, and the resumption of the rescheduling of a visit of President of Iran today. So what goodies or what message does he bring to the country? All this is tucked away inside the Standard this morning, as you can see it. I'm just waiting for my director to pick it up so that I can walk over there so that I can give you all the greater details of this as well. Intrigues behind the Ruto Raisi botched State House meeting is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. And just looking also at the sub-headline there, it says, first, East or West? Iran President Ibrahim Raisi was forced to cancel his visit to Nairobi at the last minute in what government officials said was a delay in getting memorandum of understanding completed. But was this the reason for his diplomatic faux pas? That is the question that is being asked here on the front page of the Standard this morning. And also we have a standalone picture. President William Ruto issues a title deed to a woman in Raya, Nairobi County yesterday. More than 2,000 Embakasi ranching company shareholders got their titles. That is a story that you want to follow also inside the Standard this morning. Primary school heads to become power barons. All that matters academia on page 6 of the Standard. Who will get a test on medicine. This is following the ruling of the court or the tribunal regarding the NDC and also the position of some of the contentious leadership that was held by David Mrathe and Jeremiah Kioni, and also the Jubilee Party now is convening a national delegate conference, if you may look at the dailies as well, to streamline the way forward. This is tucked away on page 13 of the Standard this morning. MPs rail at Kenya Power over tariffs. That is on the business pages of the Standard as well. Semenya wins gender case in EU court. We'll give you gritty details of this. And this was a human rights issue. And finally, she has won the case. And government to clamp down on Azimio protests. Azimio leaders plan to hold demonstrations across the country and will be met by police action after the president said they cannot take place. This story continues on page 8 of the Standard this morning. And also the Enterprise. The 6 people who may destroy your business. The 6 people who may destroy your business. Get all the wise as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. And this continues with the Enterprise magazine that really comes in handy for you every Thursday. Get all the wiser. That is a Standard for you. This is how it looks. Make sure you grab a copy. Let's move on and see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. Ruto to Raila, stop the anarchy. That is a splash. It's all about protest. State suspends refresher tests for drivers in bid to avert transport crisis. That is what the flagger is reading on top here. And face off. The Azimio La Umoja One Kenya coalition will today resume its nationwide anti-government protest and signature gathering exercise aimed at stripping the government of legitimacy, even as President William Ruto vowed to maintain peace and order and accused the opposition of sabotage. The story continues on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, principals form team to check uniform prices. Taming cartels. The Kenya Secondary School Heads Association has formed a special team to regulate the pricing of uniforms following an uproar by parents. The uniform fees racket in many schools across the country has been minting millions from already overstretched parents. And this story continues on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Remember, also the parenting magazine comes in handy for you also in the Daily Nation every Wednesday. Kindiki blames the judicial system for Shakahola horror. This is what the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki is saying here. You can continue with the story on page 10. He blames laxity by the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Intelligence and the Judiciary for the Shakahola killings, even as 10 more bodies were exhumed yesterday, taking the death toll to at least 350. Also, the teaser on top there is all about the Iran's Rise Sea jets, or jetson today after visits rescheduled. Memorandum of understanding, I should say, weren't ready. This is what the ministry says, and the story is tucked on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Nursing jobs are for grabs in Saudi Arabia. 6-figure salaries await those who qualify in deal brokered by the two countries, and that story continues on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Looking at the Star, Ruto warns Raila as Azimio plots intense demos. That is a story to want to follow. Inside the Star this morning, President vows to protect lives and property, accuses opposition of sabotage. The story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Action. CS Murkomen suspends NTSA, I should say, directive, averting drivers' strike. That is what the flagger reads here on the front page of the Star this morning. On the sidebar, levies. Sakaja eyes preachers and politicians. If you're a preacher in town and you preach or you normally carry out your sermons on Jivanji or along Aga Khan Walk, just be aware that you'll be charged or taxed 1,000 shillings every day. That is according to the latest county revenues intent of making sure they boost their kitty, and that is from Nairobi County. You can follow the story on page 20 of the Star this morning. And also, MPs reject bid for farmers' majority stake in sugar mills. That is another story that you can follow on page 22 of the Star, sugar bill. And also that quintessential picture that We've seen in other dailies where President William Ruto was issuing title deeds to Embakasi Ranching Company shareholders in Nairobi yesterday. On top, police in Migori warned against firing tear gas cans in estates. That is on page 9 of the Star. People Daily, Demos showdown is a splash. Tug of war. Azimio leader Raila Odinga has vowed to lead countrywide rallies and protests over the cost of living and August poll results, but President Ruto says elections are long gone and he will not allow violence that he blames for 6 deaths. This story is tucked away on page 4 and 5 of the People Daily. And also we have inserts here. President William Ruto addressing Embakasi Ranching Company shareholders at Rwai, where he was issuing the title deeds. And he said, quote unquote, I want to tell them, Ali, they demonstrated last Friday and 6 Kenyans lost their lives. Do you really want another demonstration so that more can die? No, it will not happen. Excuse me. This is what the president said. And on the other side, we have Azimio leader Raila Odinga saying, quote unquote, the people have decided rightly to gang up against the executive and the legislature. The people have decided to invoke Article 1 of the Constitution. And here he was addressing a gathering at Kenyatta Market in Nairobi yesterday. On top here, confusion over state visit by Iran leader. That is a story to want to follow. President Raisi now expected to arrive this morning for state visit after earlier arrival. We shall give you that story also momentarily, just to give you a glimpse of the diplomatic faux pas that led to his arriving today. And while electricity will cost more, independent power producers increase the wholesale price they charge Kenya Power, exposing users to higher bills. That is a story that you want to follow also inside the People Daily on page 14. 18 African cardinals in line to elect next pontiff. That is another story that you can follow on page 6 of the People Daily this morning. Let's see what Taifa Leo is holding for us. Nani aliaibisha rais? That is a question. Nani aliaibisha rais? Maswali yameibuka kuhusu maandalizi duni yaliyoaibisha serikali baada ya kuahirisha ziara ya Rais Ibrahim Raisi wa Iran dakika ya mwisho kutoka jana hadi leo. Mnamo Jumatatu, ikulu ilituma mwaliko kwa vyombo vya habari kuomba wanahabari kufika ikulu ya Nairobi kuangazia mkutano wa pamoja wa Rais William Ruto na kiongozi huyo wa Iran. And the story is tucked on page 2. What really happened? You can read all about that inside the Taifa Leo as well. Miguna ataka kazi ya Haji. That is another story that you can follow on page 2. Is he likely to be the next DPP? Miguna. And Mandamano Mudavadi aonya Azimio. That is a story that you can follow on page 3 of Taifa Leo this morning. Let's buckle down to some business now. C-section delivery spike shakes Kenyan insurers. That is another story that you can follow inside the Business Daily. Share of C-section deliveries nearly doubled to 17%. And we have 227 6-section done in 2022 from 110,900 in 2014. And also you have an illustration there. Top 5 counties deliveries by C-section. We have Kirinyaga has the highest number of deliveries via C-section at 40%, led by Kiambu, Tharaka Nithi at 30.2%, Nairobi 28.1%, Taita Taveta 26.5%, and that is the latest. As far as these revelations are concerned, you can read all these details inside the Business Daily. State frees Airtel, tech giant from 30% local stake sale. Telecommunications operator Airtel Kenya and global tech giants such as Amazon, Microsoft and Google will not cede at least 30% of their shareholding to locals after the government agreed to have the rule deleted from the National ICT Policy Guidelines. And this story continues on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. On the sidebar, from Sukuk to Samurai Bond, Treasury lays option to investors in London. Kenya has started meetings with potential investors in London ahead of issuance of a new bond and has kept its options open as it pursues the best deal from a Eurobond to a Sharia-compliant Sukuk or the Japanese Samurai bonds. You can follow the story inside the Business Daily this morning. Kenya strikes cheaper oil deal with 3 Gulf firms, and Safaricom sends home 33 as fraud war escalates. All that in the Business Daily. In Uganda, new term for LCs sparks legal crisis. New term for LCs sparks legal crisis. And you can read all about this on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor. And Children Embrace Monitor's Rainbow magazine. This is just in a bit to stimulate and spur reading culture. You can follow that. Also, this is a standalone picture. And also KCCA executives contracts expires. It's a bit hazy here, can't see it clearly, but hope you can see it clearly. That is on the front page of the Daily Monitor this morning. In Tanzania, Burundian opposition leaders plead to Tanzania. There's an interview there. You can follow the story on page 11 and 12, and why substantial investment is needed for Tanzania's ports. That is a story that you can follow on page 3 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Right, I shall be showing you the editorial cartoons. This is what Gado has drawn today. And this is all about the diplomatic faux pas that we're talking about regarding the president of Iran that is expected in the country today, and why it was cancelled as was scheduled to happen yesterday. I want to introduce our panelists this morning before we continue with getting greater details on this and a raft of other issues as far as foreign diplomacy and security is concerned. Foreign policy, diplomacy and security. I'm holding court this morning with Irungu Huto, who is the Executive Director of Amnesty International. Also, we do have with us Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute, the Director of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. This is Dr. Hassan Kanenje. And also we have with us Ahmed Hashi, who is a governance and policy analyst. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I thought at least you've knocked back some tea. I can see Rungu Hutons, he had a huge share there.
I'm on 1 liter.
You're on 1 liter?
1 liter of tea.
He's about to blow a gasket.
Why blow a gasket?
Because I blew one last time. But this time his coffee is going to blow a gasket.
It's good to have you back, Irungu Huton, and
Thank you
also
very much.
Peter Kagwanja, Dr. Hassan Kanenje as well. Good to see you. Ahmed Hashi, we missed you last Wednesday. The two of you also have been missing for the longest time. So you can actually update us where you have been. What is the latest? What goodies have you brought? What good information do we have so far? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
So I'm not sure about any goodies, but I've been in the United States for about a couple of weeks, and my highlight was New Orleans. Let me just educate Kenyans that if you ever go to that part of Louisiana and you call it New Orleans, the locals will be very annoyed. It's like calling Ithaka in New York with a slight Kikuyu accent.
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
No.
But this is a really fabulous city. I mean, it is steeped in history. It's steeped in the history of slavery and Juneteenth, the emancipation of the African slaves. It's also a very diverse cultural city. It is, of course, the epicenter of Hurricane Katrina, but it is just a fascinating historical place. And as they often say, it is the northernmost tip of the Caribbean. Which sounds a bit strange because it's in the middle of the south of America. So,
all right.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. Okay. And we have also Professor Peter Kagwanja, fresh from China. Meeting
so we were going in different directions.
Facing the east, if you saw that, is facing the east or the west.
Most people will say Kenya is non-aligned. We are aligned.
In both directions.
But in both directions. So I was in China. I was in Hunan. province. Hunan province is the home of the founding father of modern China, Chairman Mao Zedong. I actually went to his village where he was born, called Shaoshang. I was staying in the city of Changsha. That's the capital of Hunan. And actually now we can say the capital of China-Africa economic relations is basically designated as the linchpin city for that purpose. So I attended the China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo organized by the University of Hunan. They have a think tank there together with the Ministry of Commerce of China. So it's a very high profile meeting attended by cabinet ministers and other kind of people. I saw Kenya is beginning to penetrate the Chinese market. I saw fresh avocados. This I can say, yes, in that expo. I saw coffee. I also saw tea. The only problem is that we make the Queen's tea to sell to the Chinese. The Chinese don't take the Queen's tea. So again, our market has to adjust to the Chinese market in terms of processing our tea in the way the Chinese take it. I found that the Kenyans also have established some industries here which are beginning to process the Chinese kind of a tea. It's a huge market. I reckoned. So we also had a conference around the same. I was a speaker at that conference. So there's a future there. That's from the way I saw it in terms of the the market. Other countries are doing very well. Rwanda is really ahead in terms of penetrating the Chinese market. I saw Senegal is also very much upfront, and South Africa. Those are really two. But what was amazing is the technology that has emerged. I used to think that the idea of an electric transport is a myth. Throughout my stay in Changsha and that particular Hunan province, I traveled on electrical car. I saw electric motorcycles or bodabodas all along the roads. So there's no noise, zero noise in the town and of course zero emissions. So I believe it is possible. I think a boda there, a nice one. I asked the price at the expo. It's slightly below $1,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I carried the details of the company. Slightly below $1,000. So it is possible that we can have we can also be this. I'm sure we have to adjust to what do you need to do to comply with the new technology. So it will take time for us, but for the Chinese, they have really almost made that transition to electric cars. Yes, you could see it. I never used any car with fuel. No. Throughout the whole stay, it was amazing.
The transition has begun to...
for them, they have transited.
The e-mobility.
Yes, they have done it. Yes, I used a Mercedes, I used one of the Mazdas local there, I used another car, and all of them were electric cars.
Brilliant. Oh, Dr. Hassan Kanunji, good morning.
Good morning, Dibal. How are you?
Very well.
Yes. Well, my absence was occasioned by my visit to some of our neighboring countries. I was in Djibouti for a regional conference on integration where I was a speaker. And one thing I noticed is, I think the last time a president visited, he must have left quite an impact. He was quite the talk of the town in Djibouti. I think he inspired quite a bit of people. And it's interesting that such a conference is taking place in Djibouti because our northern neighbors have been fairly reluctant to be part of our larger East African kind of integration project. And so to the extent that we were discussing that in that capital, I think it's something that is very positive, and Kenya should be able to exploit the existing goodwill and the kind of momentum that I think countries are building towards integration.
Fantastic. Ahmed Hashi.
Mimi nilikuwa natupa mawe town.
Ulikuwa local. Local na local.
Wacha nimalize, sikukuinterrupt.
Samani.
Mimi nilikuwa natupa mawe, nilikuwa na demonstrate against standard of living. I'm not with the jet set crowd, I'm with the people there on the ground. And we were, let me finish what I'm saying. I was very silent when you people were speaking. So I was busy demonstrating with the people of this country about the price of food, about our wayward government, these taxes that were being imposed on us. One of our panelists, who is a former governor of, is it Nyandaro or is it?
Laikipia.
Laikipia, distinguished gentleman from Laikipia. He was roughed up on national television, thrown in the back of a police Black Maria. We used to call it Black Maria in our day. It just seems like, Kipling used to say that words are the most powerful drugs that mankind uses. Words are very powerful. And, our former governor, Director, is a very powerful speaker, very articulate man. And I want to condemn in the most possible way police action in his city, where he has a right to demonstrate, peacefully picket. And it's terrible that leaders in this country are being treated like that with the police. The police commissioner needs to show some respect to our elders. You can arrest people, but arrest them in a way that makes sense. Just don't throw them at the back of a truck like a sack of potatoes. It's appalling. So as I think all of us control the cells now, and we call upon President Ruto to reach out to former Prime Minister Odinga, and please settle this country to Mechoka. Please sort it to Mechoka.
Yeah, he's expected to report at Nyahururu DCI tomorrow. So after the arrest as well. So still, that is still ongoing.
I want to raise a point of protest.
Of protest. Yes.
By him describing us on air.
In your own standing orders,
Yes. by Hashi describing us as just jet set.
That was tongue-in-cheek, of course.
No,
Is that tongue-in-cheek?
No, yours was out. It was not
No.
the Globetrotters.
That tongue was not in cheek. I saw it out.
So, Dibal, today is World Population Day.
When was yesterday?
Was it yesterday?
Yes.
Am I a day late?
Yeah, day
Okay,
late.
unfortunately. But I'm still going to say what I was going to say.
Please do.
You know, one of the interesting things about World Population Day yesterday was essentially that, we passed the 8 billion mark, which we discussed on this show, I think, several months ago. But the other one is that in the next 27 years, Nigeria will actually be one of the biggest populations in this world.
Wonderful.
And will surpass the United States. And of course, the other fun fact is that there are now more Indians in the world than there are Chinese. I don't know what we do with that in terms of our foreign policy, but I think it's important to recognize these new developments.
Foreign policy is not determined by numbers.
It helps.
It's the economy.
Even the economy is determined sometimes by numbers.
All right.
But I know what you're saying.
Just means we'll all eat a lot of more chutney.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I thought about is that for the parents who are watching us, perhaps they need to be encouraging their children to start learning Hausa instead of Mandarin. Because the future is Hausa and Nigeria, not Mandarin Chinese. Yes.
I want to say something about that.
Yes.
That's another tongue in cheek. This time inside the cheek.
No, it was the cheek.
Yeah.
No, that was just the cheek.
No time.
We are very proud of the people of Nigeria. It's a massive country that needs more people. Africa is empty, needs more people, need more children. I am doing my part. I have 6. It is a lie, Debal, that we should have less children. This is part of this European and American NGOs. Debal, Brazil and all the other countries that are at the top of the world economy are over 400 million people. So we welcome Nigeria's birth increase, and we urge them to have more children and make Africa more stronger.
Right. So, I can see that also in America, a lot of men are taking vasectomy right now with the passing of the...
Hopefully just once.
with the passing of with the reversion of the Roe and Wade Act. So, still, when you're talking about population, there's a stimulation of it. You come one side, another side. I don't know if it's a restoration of the vasectomy. I don't know what they're doing on that particular note. But there is a very interesting development also in Zanzibar. Just on a lighter note before we get into the meat of things, that if right now you want to go to Zanzibar and you're a man, you should not be plaiting your hair. It is banned in Zanzibar
I
because
agree.
the Ministry of Culture
Yeah.
says they want to maintain the traditions and
Very
culture
good.
there. So it has been banned. Plating of hair.
There's actually a
if you
Gazette notice.
Yes.
I don't know if
And
there's a
people are
Gazette
being
notice.
arrested at the airport.
Yes.
But they've not given indication clearly if you're a foreigner, you will be arrested once.
We should do the
you
same thing
land.
here.
In the spirit of maintaining culture. Where is the hell? That is on the human rights perspective. I know maybe you want to say something regarding that. I had in mind
I
when
think
I
the
saw
broader
this.
context really is a growing religiosity and a growing moralism, I think, that we have to be worried about. I mean, in today's newspaper, we have the Cabinet Secretary for Interior speaking about Shakahola. I went before the same ad hoc Senate, and actually, you wanted us to go light touch, eh?
Yeah,
so I'm
light
about
touch.
to go to
Yeah, yeah.
Shakahola. Maybe we keep that for later. So
keep
I
that
guess
for later.
the light touch response to this is that the right to wear plaits and to do your hair. My hair, my choice. I think is what I would suggest, that we should not be dictated to by governments. Governments have better things to do than tell us how to dress and how to do our hair. I think that would be my thing.
But it's in the spirit of
Well,
culture.
I
Or
and
they
tradition.
should develop a
Well.
ministry of personal hygiene and.
Liba,
Yeah.
it will solve a lot of issues if every man just looked like me.
Exactly.
With a shining pet.
But by choice, of course.
But the world would
Smart guy.
the world would not be more peaceful. You remember one of our friends who is also a frequent guest here, talking about the war between Ethiopia
And
and Eritrea. It was like two bald men fighting over a comb. So we have seen war over combs. So you're not promising us peace.
Jabal, I used to hold this misguided view of my dear friend, Mr. Irungu, until my son came home with braided hair. And he asked me why I ordered him to change. And he said that I thought you were a Democrat and this wasn't a big issue. And I told him, democracy is for the people, it's not for my house.
Yes.
Democracy belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to my home. In my home, I am the captain, the field marshal of that house. The emperor was my former wife. I was number 2. Therefore, I told him to remove his braids right away. And I want to say to the president of Zanzibar, Zanzibar has a president of the union. Then there's a president of the Revolutionary Council.
Yes.
They have a really amazing political system. They're in a new millennia. They're far away from us. These New Africa halisi hawa. And most of the people who are at the leading edge of our country were trained in Tanzania, including our Chief Justice Mutunga, who was tear gassed the other day. Takumwambia pole mzee. I wish I was there to help you.
Akae kwa nyumba.
Akae kwa nyumba. Bwana Mutunga, next time ukimwona msimupe tear gas. I'm younger, give it to me. So Debala, I'm going to end on this note. Zanzibar is right. Vijana wakate nywele kwa baba. Wacha mchezo.
I just wanted to, for the purpose of record, to, because there are many people watching us and listening to us, that as of today, as we speak, the population, the five, or if you can talk about the top 10 countries in terms of population now, are China with 1.456, followed by India with 1.422, followed by the United States with 336.95, something like that. Indonesia, Pakistan, and Nigeria come 6th in that order, followed by Brazil, which is also the second most populous African country. Brazil, the most populous after Nigeria, and then Bangladesh, and Russia and Mexico. Those are the top 10 most populous country by today, according to Worldometer, which is the United Nations.
And the richest.
The richest. So,
but India is on the way of overtaking China.
No, it is not. It's actually Africa. By 2050, Africa will be the most popular.
Yeah.
But according to the world,
India is there before.
India is
I mean,
actually
Nigeria
really
is
surpassing
moving very
China.
No, China has also undertaken a 2-child, 3-children policy. So it's based on the older things. People are now, my family will be bigger than yours.
But when we're crossing over to the 8 billion mark, isn't it,
Yes.
Irungi Houghton? Yeah. The reports from actually the UN itself were saying India is on the way to actually...
On the way, but you see 1.456 and 1.422 is a huge gap given population. The way population catch up with each other is, I think the threshold would be 2050, and Africa as a continent will be the most populous in the world with it 2.5 billion people, then followed by India. That's the prediction, and then followed by China, or followed by China and India. This is depending on how that population grows.
And I think the what's critical about the numbers is that actually Africa has the capacity to be a major player.
Yes.
I think that's the point. But if we are not able to create the industry, the productive base of our continent, we're not going to see this. And it's a topical issue because I think the Africa Free Trade Continental group is actually meeting in Nairobi this week. So I think this is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, we have it also.
In other words, we are going to have the largest population and the youngest, but the question will be about the quality. Yeah. So if Hashi and his colleagues keep on going to the streets and throwing stones rather than going to throw hammer and do the nail in, how are we going to industrialize? If Hashi is,
that's a good question.
So we as Africans have to take our responsibility very seriously. If we don't industrialize, our youth bulge is going to be a doom.
Yes.
And what we are seeing with these, people, and I don't know what they are calling streets, whatever. I mean, people need to sit down and talk. Really, seriously, we need to talk about our future, and let's not assume that because you lost an election, you have to go to the street, or you won the election, then you have to monopolize the government. This is Kenya. Both the two are extremist views. That you won the election, therefore everybody else you are the shareholders, everybody else is an onlooker, or you lost the election and therefore you have to do a regime change through the street.
About that,
we will come to that.
Yeah.
Well, that will also form the basis of our conversation.
Yeah.
I wanted just to, before we get into the nitty-gritties as well, Irungi Houghton, we had also issues to do with the life imprisonment. And the court has made its judgment regarding that and saying it's unconstitutional. I wondered, maybe from the perspective of human rights, if you are loading this particular move by the courts, and just looking globally where we stand as far as life imprisonment is concerned, where are we headed? So if we don't have life imprisonment, what is the alternative?
So as Amnesty International Kenya, we haven't looked at the judgment yet. I know it's my in tray in terms of advisory, but I think broadly speaking, if we can start off with the death penalty and the abolition of the death penalty, we are abolitionists as an organization. We say that the death penalty is neither deterrent for serious crimes, nor is it rehabilitative. It has the capacity for rehabilitation. Many of the people in committee, we have I think about 600 now who are still on death row. Most of them are essentially, as they say, dead men walking. They do not have a sense of future, they do not have a sense of hope. So we are calling on the government basically to remove the death penalty as a legal consequence for all crimes. In terms of the judgment that was delivered by a three-judge bench yesterday, was it earlier? I think it was a couple of days ago. The life imprisonment is, on one hand, it is one of these sentences that keeps people, in jail for an indeterminate period of time. But in reality, most people are released on parole much earlier, right? So the first thing is, when you say that people are there for life imprisonment, there are very few people who actually die in prison. Because they tend to serve a period of time and then they're released on good behavior and on the basis of, assessments that determine that they have reformed, right? The other complexity, I think, is our prisons are completely over congested. And I was at the remand industrial area a few months ago, and you know, we have something like I think we have a prison population of about 50,000 people, and we probably have the capacity for about half of that. So I think the other question is just this: is the cost of keeping people indefinitely in prison. But I think from a public concern, the main issue is whether the offenders, once they've been sentenced, once they've been convicted and they've been sentenced, whether they're actually safe to come back into the population. And I think that's what the public fear will be, is that whether we are prematurely returning people back into the society without the means of tracking them. So I think this has to be looked at in the context of some of the reforms that the judiciary have introduced, even I think not as long ago as 2 weeks ago. So, for example, there is now a sexual offenders registry that is accessible. So for those people who commit serious sex crimes, I mean, all sex crimes are serious, sex crimes, they are essentially going to be placed in a registry which will ensure that people are able to track them as they are released back into society. Mm-hmm. So I think there are some measures that have to come with this proposal from the, or rather this judgment from the judiciary. I do think it will be appealed, but these would be my considerations. And perhaps you've provoked Amnesty to release a statement in the next couple of days.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay, we want to follow the story of the intrigues behind the Ruto-Russia botched State House meeting. Raisi is bound to be now jetting into the country today. Let's just begin from that particular note. We have a very interesting editorial cartoon as well that has been drawn by Gado here. Red carpet was rolled out yesterday. He never jetted in, but today, let's just begin with you, Peter Kagwanja, on this particular. Was it a diplomatic faux pas?
Well, I got a lot of calls yesterday, unjustifiably, because I have absolutely nothing to do with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And like every new outfit, I am sure they are still trying to find their bearing here and there. It's a very new team that has not been there. I'm talking at the top, from the minister, CS, and all. I don't know what role State House and others were playing, but what was being asked is why it was stopped. Of course, the discussion is that the MOU were not all signed. That's one thesis. The other thesis is that there were a lot of, Kenya is really at the heart of the so-called geopolitics, and I think we are aware of that, and we are watching. By geopolitics, I mean that the interests of the West and the interests of the emerging powers, including Iraq, Iran, Russia, China, Brazil, and so on, are really, centered around us. Mm-hmm. And the coming of Iran on a state visit would have actually been a big issue. So one wonder is whether it is an official visit or a state visit. Mm-hmm. When it's a state visit, then it's a big issue. That this is really the apex of diplomatic relations. Mm-hmm. It's an official visit. It's just official visit. That's simply you discuss a few things.
So there was not really clarity whether it is a state visit or just an official visit. As
you can see, the headlines, they're talking about botched. That's the word being used, and therefore there is an accusation here. So I think you cannot pronounce yourself. I mean, take it from me as a scholar, I would not pronounce myself if I don't have all the facts on the table. But they're going to come out on the table. What I do know is that there was no clarity whether this was an official visit or a state visit, because the two have a distinction. Now, two obviously there are issues of MOUs and whatever it is that was being discussed. But to just say that the context is as important as the content. And here the context is, this is Iran visiting Kenya. And this is Iran, which is basically on the other extreme end of the United States of America. It's like Korea. You choose North Korea or South Korea. South Korea, it would just to be normal business. Nobody would be making issues. The president visit there was not a big issue. But try North Korea. And now you see what I mean by geopolitical, flare-ups.
So this has got a bit of a geopolitical orientation to it.
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah.
But
No, even
how
his
can,
coming.
how can clarity not be on state visit or official visit of the president? And we know he's touring not only Kenya, we have other countries that he's touring around. He's going to Uganda as well.
Yes.
So the same template that maybe is used as is a state tour, as we've been given the information, there's no way now that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the government had no sorting idea this was a state visit. Or
you see, the governments are about protocols. If you know, government's about protocol. Which car follows which car in a presidential convoy? Which number are you? What is the size of the carpet? When is the carpet rolled out? That's all.
Which chair do you sit on?
Which chair do you sit on, and which side of the chair you sit on? And what is your number in that front queue? Are you number 3? So and it's all about interpretation of power. So a clarity on the issue of whether this is official or state visit is primary, because it means a lot of other things will roll in. I remember when we did the Constitution, the August 10. I mean August. We voted on August 4th, and that week we were debating about what is the status of this Constitution. How do we go about it? And we said this is as important as 1963, right? The independence, because we are having a new Constitution to replace the old one, so we must give it the whole treatment as such. Now, the acceptance of that proposition, that this is as important as 1963, changed the whole dynamics. The size of the flag was changed, the invitations of heads of state from other countries, and it was done within a short period, that we could only invite those who are from the neighboring countries, Sudan, Ethiopia, and so on. And therefore, protocol, government is all about protocols, and these protocols have to do with what is going to be done in this kind of an occasion. So that's where the clarity is not coming in, even when it comes in, because this is really a signature. I mean, a visit. If one would put it, because it runs fast public, and those who are familiar with the Kenya-Iran relations in the first decade will know that there's been a kind of a roller coaster here and there.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with my senior learned friend on the right. I think that the Europeans and the Americans piled pressure on our president to reject this visit, just as much as there was a cancellation of the Chinese foreign minister last time. The foreign ministry is in a rut. Looks like things are not working out at that place. And the reason is that even in Ethiopia, the Sudanese rejected to come to the IGAD meeting because of its President Ruto, who was chairing it. So it seems that foreign affairs is not in a rut, it is in a bunker. And when I was there, Debal, if something like this happened, the president would chew our head off. It would be a disaster for us. And I think that the Kenya government ought not to be a plaything of Western powers. We're an independent country, we're a state on our own, we're part of East Africa. President Museveni is going to welcome President Rais, I can tell you that right away, because when the West call him, he fights them off and says, no, we're going to do things the way we want to do. The United States is failing in the Middle East diplomatic front because Saudi Arabia and Iran are now have a détente, if I can call it that. There is a new relationship in which China brokered in the Middle East, and the United States is deeply embarrassed at its failure in diplomacy. And this has given impetus to Iran to now come to North Africa and East Africa and try and restore relations there. Last time I was there, we were visited by the Minister of Foreign Affairs then. And Kenya has had a good relationship with Iran. Debal, we cannot in one angle say that we are non-aligned, and another line say that the foreign ministry guys are new at the job. I think that something is not right there. Everybody can see that, and that needs to change. And one of the things that needs to change is the deputy president is deeply involved in the foreign affairs of this country. That's his right under the national security and under the cabinet. He has every right to play a role there. But I think we should let the foreign minister of this country do his job, and his permanent secretary. And State House should not get involved too much. One thing is for sure, foreign policy is the president's foreign policy. It's not the foreign minister's policy. The foreign minister's job is to implement the president's foreign policy. But he has to come up with a mission and vision, as in Kenya people like to use that word. And I think that it's a deep embarrassment to our country that one of the most powerful people in this world, in international relations, President Raisi, state visit has come to naught. And I think that there's something very potent about, and the press has covered it, that our government there was a lot of pressure that was piled. And up to today, we have not met the Chinese. Up to today, we have not met the Chinese. So it looks that the government has gone to Berlin and it intends to stay there. It's not going to Beijing very soon.
Right, it's not really come to naught as you are trying to put it, because he is coming in today. So we'll appreciate also if it's a confirmable fact from your end that yes, that we have the US who are involved in this, and how the government has been shoehorned, or this is just a matter of speculation?
No, it's not speculation. It's actually a very well-informed opinion, because the United States gets involved with every country when it comes to the president or the government of Iran, because the relations between the United States and Iran are in the pits. Israel is an ally of the United States, and you know the tensions in the Middle East today is between the Israelis and the Iranians, and any foray of the Iranian government to Africa or any other state is seen as poking the eye of the United States. So the U.S. is definitely going to call this government and say, look, why are the Iranians coming to Kenya? You're an allied government. We don't want you to be dilly-dallying with the Iranians.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Kananja before we take a short break.
The last-minute rescheduling of the meeting, presidential visit from Iran, is embarrassing, but it's not unusual. I think countries do this all the time. One thing that I think is important to note is there is a likelihood that the technical teams had not harmonized all the details that are necessary. You know, a presidential visit is normally a culmination of a number of things that have actually already been done. They don't come to start working out agreements or MOUs at that time. A lot of time they're simply coming to put signatures on things that have already been agreed, discussed on. Now, Kenya and Iran have a long-standing relationship, even though, of course, in recent years it has been a little bit, shaky. But there are a number of agreements that Kenya already has with Iran that has never exactly been followed through. Now, at the time when we're facing one of the worst energy crises with regard to, whether it's inflation or just the prices, it is significant that I think President Ruto looks at Kenya's national interest. And I want to believe that that is partly, of course, outside the geopolitical calculations, that is partly informing his decision, because Iran is one of the countries with the largest, oil reserves and stuff like that, and gas. And so it does not hurt if you can be able to get that. However, the complication that comes in is also Iran is under immense, especially Western sanctions.
Correct.
And some of those sanctions can extend to people who are doing business. Correct. But then Kenya, as a sovereign country, also has the right to be able to speak to its other partners, or let's say from the West, that just the same way, for instance, if we exempted India, when it comes to that, why can't you exempt us? Why should we be paying a liter for $2? Correct. When we can be able to get it for maybe $1.50 or less than that? So we don't have to go to Tanzania to buy fuel, the way Kenyans are crossing over. And so I think President Ruto is also being informed by some of the national interest calculations that can perhaps help the economy at this, very dangerous time. But granted, of course, there is so much pressure that may come as a result of that, in part because of the frosted relations that Iran has with the West.
Mm-hmm. All right, allow us just to take a short break on this particular note. I think it's 8 o'clock on the nose, 7 o'clock on the nose. I'm going ahead of myself right now. But when we circle back, we shall drill deeper on this particular issue. It's not the first time that we've seen our diplomatic office not really acting in the wisest of fashion. Before also we saw what really happened with Somalia delegates here in the country so far, and the missing of memorandum of understanding, which is a critical document, of course, when we have this visitation. I think that raises eyebrows, also the preparation and the manner of the stuff that we do have in the foreign ministry so far as this is concerned. So we shall drill deeper on this as well. Don't go away, watching Global Today here on Morning Prime.